This time the client wants to add stripes on the middle pipe that looks kind of those ones here. Doing this by hand it's a little bit tricky because it's difficult to follow the volume of the shape. If I try with the roto paint, you see that it doesn't work. You might think that I have exaggerated, but believe me, it's not that easy. For this task, the UV pass won't help us, because it's not possible to paint precisely where we want. Let me show you what I mean. I'm just gonna merge the roto paint with the image to help me see where I'm painting. And now let me try to paint something over here. So this works, but if I go in my ST map, it seems that I have painted over my helmet. You see that this is not where I want to be. And besides, this is caused because I'm wrapping only the RGB and not the alpha. So to fix that, I have to come into my ST map and change this to RGBA. And now it's fixed. I can try to paint looking through the final comp. But you can see that it's impossible to do it correctly. So this method doesn't work. In the previous chapter, I briefly showed you the UVs of my model. What you can see here are the UVs of the pipes. Because they are flat and almost completely straight, it's gonna be way easier to draw straight lines. And once wrapped around the model, they will follow the volume of the shape. To be able to have an access to the UVs, we need to import the 3D model. I have a personal preferences for Alembic files because they allow us to hide or show whatever parts of the model we want. Here I have imported my model. I have also imported the camera. It's important to be sure that the camera that we are using, it's the same that we used for the render. Now let's see how the 3D model looks like. I'm gonna quickly plug a checkerboard so we can see it better. You can see that we have the exact same result as we had with the UV pass in the previous chapter. We even have the same issue with the body. And as I was saying, what I like with the Alembic files is that I can select which part I want to show. With the help of the scene graph, I can hide or show everything, only one thing, or a group of things. In my case, what I need is the middle pipe. This one here. Once again, because everything is well organized, it's gonna be easy for me to find it in the hierarchy. I know that it is in the gear, on the left part, it's one of the pipes, and it is in the middle, so it's this one here. Now I can hide everything and show only this one. Now that you have a better view on how Alembic files work, let me show you how to access the UVs. For that, I'm gonna need first to plug my model to a skyline render. By default, the projection mode of the skyline render is set to render camera. This means that if I plug my camera here, and if I set an output format, what I'm gonna see with the skyline render is gonna be the same as my original image. You can see that now our model is framed the exact same way as our original image. If I go back into my skyline render, we can see that we have other projection mode. And one of them is called UV. But now if we take a look, we can see that they look like they are stretched in comparison with the UVs I've showed you before. They should look like this. And the reason why they are stretched, it's because we need to set the format of the image to a square. UVs are always in a square format. Also, if you take a closer look, you can see that we don't have all this part in our UVs here. In the previous chapter, I was talking about UDIMs, and this is the reason why we are not seeing this part here. It's on the second tile and the skyline render can show only one tile at the time. I'm gonna show you a little bit later how we can access to the other tiles. Now let's set the format correctly. For the moment, I'm gonna select 1K, is gonna be enough. Also, for the UV, we don't need to plug the camera. Now that the UVs are correctly set, I can go back in my Alembic file and select only the part that I want to show. It was in body, gear, left part, left pipes, and it was the front middle. Now I know exactly where I need to paint to draw the lines that the client is asking for. I won't directly paint over it. I'm gonna use it only as a reference. So I'm gonna create a roto paint and I'm gonna set it at the same format. For that, I'm gonna show you a hidden option that maybe some of you doesn't know. Here you have a little triangle. If you click on it, you reveal other options, and one of them is the format. For the moment, if I plug my viewer, you see that the format is set to this one, and it's the same here. But now I can change it directly in the RotoPaint. So here I need the square 1K. This option can be really handy when we have to deal with different formats. And by the way, you have the exact same one in the Roto node. Here, exactly the same. The reason why I'm showing you this is that we could be tempted to do that. But let me show you the type of problem we could face a little bit later. Let me merge this over the skyline render first. And now I'm gonna paint some lines. For the moment, everything seems to work. But now, if I want to change the format, look what happens. Now my lines are not at the right position anymore. To fix that, I should do this instead. Clone the reformat, unplug the RotoPaint, and put the reformat after it. This is what we need to do if we want to change the format later. But in case the format is set properly and you know you won't change it, using this option in the RotoPaint allows us to get rid of a useless node. Now let me clean a little bit my nodes and redo my paint. Now I'm ready to use these lines as a new texture for my 3D model. So the easiest way would be to do simply that. But if I do so, I will break all my little setup here. So I'm gonna use another technique. There is a node called Apply Material. Here we need to input a material. It needs to be a 2D image. And in the other input, we need to plug a 3D model. So for the material, I will plug my lines. And for the 3D object, I will plug my Alembic file. Now, if I plug my viewer here, you can see that now the texture is correctly wrapped around my pipe. The last thing that needs to be done is to convert this 3D image into a 2D one. And for that, we're gonna use another skyline render with the projection mode set to render camera. By default, it's already correctly set. Now that we are done with our painting, the merge node is useless, so I'm gonna delete it. And I'm gonna rearrange a little bit my nodes so it's gonna be clear and easy to read. Let's merge our result over our beauty to see how it works. It's important that our output format of the skyline render is the same as our beauty. As you can see now, the lines are perfectly wrapped around the pipe, but we have three visible problems. The first one is that we shouldn't see the lines that goes behind the pipe. The second one is that the resolution is too low, we need to increase it. And the third one is that we need to activate the anti-aliasing in the skyline render. So we're gonna start with this one because it's the easiest. To activate the anti-aliasing, you need to come here and choose one of these options. Pay attention to what's gonna happen here. I'm gonna choose medium. Now we have clean edges, we can say that one problem is solved. For the lines, the problem is related with the alpha. At the moment we are outputting the alpha of the lines, but what we need instead is the alpha of the UV. So we're gonna copy it to the RotoPaint and then pre-mult it. The reason why we have these black parts now, it's because our new alpha looks like this. And what we want to keep is only the stripes. So what I can do is to put the red channel into the alpha, and this will fix the problem. I'm gonna use a shuffle node and simply put the red channel in the alpha like this. Now the new alpha looks like this. And the problem is solved. The last problem I need to correct is the resolution, and for that I'm gonna use the same technique that I've done in the previous chapter. I'm gonna use a reformat, put it into a scale mode and increase the value until I'm satisfied. But here I have a specificity. I need to increase the resolution of the paint, but I also need to increase the value of the UV, because here I'm using it as alpha. So the format needs to match. In order to do that, I'm gonna create a reformat after the first reformat here, clone it and put it after the paint. I'll put scale for the type, and for the moment I leave it at 1. Then I clone it, and I put it here. Now I put my viewer at the end of the comp and increase the value until I'm satisfied. It seems here that the problem doesn't come from the resolution. It probably comes from the paint itself. Let's figure out. Indeed, if we check our 1K RotoPaint, we can see that here it's pretty pixelated, and this is due to the low resolution. If we take a look after the reformat, we get this result. You see that we can still feel the pixels. I have made here another RotoPaint, but with a format of 4K. And you can see that here the resolution is much better. If we compare the result of our 1K after the reformat and this one, we can clearly see the difference. Fortunately, we can solve this problem by changing the filter in the reformat. At the moment, it's set to cubic and the result looks like this. But if I use the filter called Mitchell, Parson or Notch, we're gonna have better results. I'm gonna leave it to Mitchell and compare with our 4K RotoPaint. You see that now our result is much closer, but let's see how it does look in the final comp. If I put it back to cubic, it was looking like that. If I replace this by the 4K RotoPaint, it looks like this. And now if I put back my reformat to Mitchell and plug it back here, you see that this time the result is acceptable. Now that you understand how we can extract UVs from a 3D model and paint over it, let me quickly redo this with a cleaner and easier to control setup. Alright, now if I want to change the spacing in between lines or the thickness of them, I just need to come here and I can change the values here. And for the thickness, I change this. So let's say I'm gonna put 15 and maybe something like this. Also, you might have seen that I had a little problem with black edges on the stripes. This is a filtering problem that can be solved with a little trick. This happens usually when we use sharpening filters. I was using the filter called Mitchell. You see here that I have a black edge. For now, I solved it simply by changing the filter. You see that with this different filter, the problem is already solved. But just to show you, if I use another filter, like for example the Riffman, here the problem is even stronger. So the easiest solution would be to simply change the filter. But let's say that you can't, that you need to use this filter. I put back Mitchell. The trick is to use a node called log2lin. By default, this node converts logarithmic value into linear ones. But by default, in Nuke, the values are in linear. So the first thing we need to do is to change the operation from log to lin, lin to log. Then you plug this node before the reformat. Now this node is taking linear values here and it converts them into logarithmic ones. This is why the pipe looks washed out at the moment. Now we're gonna create a second log2lin node and be sure that the operation is log2lin, because now we need to convert these new logarithmic values and put them back into linear. So we're gonna put this node after the reformat. And you can see now that the problem is solved. If I disable the log2lin nodes, the black edges are gone. Even if I try to put Riffman as a filter, I don't have this problem anymore. So I'm gonna put it back to Mitchell and we can continue. Don't worry, we are almost there. It took a little bit of time, but now our little stripe setup is done. Before continuing, let me do a quick recap. We need to put stripes like these ones around our middle pipe. So we're gonna need to make them orange. Also, this is a texture, so we need to put them into the diffuse albedo. So like I've shown you in the previous chapter, I'm gonna shuffle these stripes into a new layer, separate the diffuse light and shuffle them also into a new layer, and then I will comp everything with the subtractive method. Because I've already done this process, I'm gonna go a little bit quicker. Alright, everything is set up. The last thing I need to do is to change the color of the stripes. Instead of doing it here, I'm gonna do it in the beauty comp section. And because it's just a matter of changing the color, I'm gonna use a multiply node. So here, because I have an alpha, in order to work correctly, I need to unpremult first, do my changes. So here's gonna be a multiply, and then I premult. Now to change the color, I'm gonna pick it in the diffuse albedo. And there you go, we finally have these orange stripes around the pipe. But I'm not completely satisfied yet. I think it's a little bit too shiny. I would like to add a bit of roughness where I have my stripes. What I mean is that I want to blur the reflection where the stripes are. And also I'm gonna change the filtering. I think that Parson was better. So let me quickly do that first. To add our roughness, we're gonna use the stripes as a mask and then blur the specular path. And because I'm still working with the subtractive method, I'm gonna first remove the specular path. Now I can plug a blur here and use the stripes as a mask. Of course, I need to change the channels because I want to blur the RGB. So now let's see what happened when I increase the value of the blur. You see, we are removing the reflection by scattering the light. Now we can plus this result back to the beauty and make some adjustments. Let me show you the before and after. Without the blur, it was looking like that. And now it's looking like this. I can fine-tune a little bit, but I think it's already looking pretty good. I think I'm gonna put 30. Now I can group this into a backdrop and rename the previous one. Okay, cool, so I have sent this version to the client and he has already sent me back some new notes. He wants the stripes a little bit thicker, he wants them around this pipe also, and he wants them to move from here to there. So like in the previous chapter, because we took the time to build a strong comp, this is gonna be done in no time. So first let's make the stripes a little bit thicker. For that I just have to decrease the value here. And there you go. To add them on the second pipe, I just need to go in the 3D model and display this part. I know that this one is called front top. If I would like, I can even show it in the bottom part. This works because I have all my UVs grouped together and they all are flat, straight and oriented in the same direction. Let me quickly show you. So these are the UVs, this is the texture, and because the alpha is plugged to the UVs, it's gonna be always updated automatically. So now for the third request, I just need to plug a transform here and move the checkerboard horizontally. Let's see how it looks on the model. Pretty cool, isn't it? And because I don't want to put keyframes, I'm gonna use a simple expression to animate these stripes forever. Right click here and select Add Expression. Now simply type frame. As a value, it gives the number of the current frame. This is the final result. To correct the little problem here, it can be done by creating a mask with a crypto matte. I won't do it here because I already shown it in the previous chapter. Finally, the client is happy and this version has been approved. But hold on, because there is one last thing I need to show you in the next and final chapter. Thank you very much for watching. Just before leaving you, I would like to give you an information. This course is 100% free and I'm not paid for it. I really made it with the desire to share knowledge with you. But if you like to reward or support the job I've done, you can give me a tip by following the PayPal link in the description. Once again, thank you very much and see you soon.